with your hosts, Jeff and Toke. What's going on, Jeff?
Toke, what's happening, man? Nothing but great news in Kingsland as always.
Well, I will say the Portland Trailblazers beating the San Antonio Spurs in that one game where Wemby got hurt and De'Aaron Fox really
we'll just say underperformed.
Thank you for the save there. Yeah. Brought me great joy.
It was excellent. I was scrolling Twitter and somehow I got connected to San Antonio Twitter, and the amount of comments telling him to go back to Sac and that he's not the guy and all the things that, frankly, all the things that we've been saying about De'Aaron Fox, for them to hear it from the San Antonio fans directly was pretty funny.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, obviously he's a very good player, but I think that what the Spurs are experiencing is what the Kings fans experience, which is it seems like he's coasting a lot of the time. And that works in San Antonio where you have Wemby and you have a bunch of other good players. Yeah. But he was never going to be the franchise guy here in Sacramento. And I think that, not to revisit the trade, he had to go. It's just, again, the execution of getting him out the door that was the problem. But, you know, De'Aaron Fox, aside from his 2025 destruction of the Sacramento Kings, also contributed to an earlier destruction of the Sacramento Kings in 2018. So without further ado, I'd like to insert the man who drafted De'Aaron Fox, Vlade Divac. Let's hear what he had to say recently.
I don't remember the year, but you had a chance to get Luka.
Yeah.
And you passed on him.
Yeah.
You want to talk about that? Because you had drafted European players.
Yeah.
Prior to that.
I went to Madrid to talk to Luka, you know, a year before the draft. So he was definitely top on the list. But, you know, obviously, you know, it looks like, you know, I made a mistake. But Luka is a unbelievable talent, you know, and definitely, you know, with Nikola, one of the top players in the league. My thinking was like, you know, because all my assistants, you know, and told me that he can, you know, play a small forward, and I said, no, Luka is a point guard. Luka.
Okay, first of all, he could play small forward. Just want to put that out there.
And
or shooting guard.
And every one of his assistants told him as such. So
Luka is a coach on the floor. Luka is a, you know, and I felt like, you know, if I get Luka, you know, I have to, you know, trade Fox. And
okay, so De'Aaron Fox retroactively screwed us in this situation. I understand that Fox had a good rookie season and like he looked like he was going to be a good player from right out the jump. Like Vlade hit one there, but the idea that De'Aaron Fox is the reason, you know. It looks so much worse in retrospect because Bagley's not a player, and he's actually the only one. I think him and Josh Jackson are the only two out of the top 5 who are not players functionally in the NBA, at least at a starting level. So this makes it look so much worse. And I've defended Vlade for the logic of it for several years because there was no reason Marvin Bagley couldn't be a good player. And I think if Marvin Bagley was a Trae Young type player or someone like that, I'm talking about like that level, not that position.
Sure.
I don't think that the Luka thing looks as bad today, but this isn't all that Vlade said.
Already, you know, got a relationship with the Fox, you know, and I see he can do it, you know, he can, you know, small market team, you know, it's a perfect fit for him. You know, Luka is a big market player.
Yeah, he is.
You know, and I felt like, you know, if I get Luka, you know, down the road, you know, I may lose him, you know. And so it's a tough decision, you know.
Yeah.
It's a very tough decision, you know. If I go back, you know, probably I would draft him, but now he's you know, having a great career.
Yeah. Luka's unbelievable. But let's go back to Drazen Petrovic. We didn't
Okay.
Boy.
So this is where I have to stop defending Vlade. When you draft a player in the NBA, the way the collective bargaining agreement works, you functionally have them for the first 8 years of their career. Point blank. And I think that there's just something about the thought process of it's loser think, just to get to the kind of end real quick. It's you're already thinking about losing someone before you even have them. Like it's like a very anxious mentality that doesn't kind of value yourself in a lot of ways. If Luka was drafted by the Kings and they put a team around him and they made it to the finals, perhaps despite him being a party guy and looking to, be in a big market, at some point he's going to turn 30 and he's going to grow up, right?
Right.
So I think that there's just some loser think built into that thought process, but I gotta totally rake Vlade over the coals for this. What the hell is a big market player? What's a big market player and what's a small market player? Was Tim Duncan a small market player? Are you talking about personality types? And if such, and you're saying Fox is a small market type, why did the Kings lose him after 7 years? Why didn't he finish his career in Sacramento? I think that there's actually something else going on here, which is either you put a good team around a player or you don't. And if you don't, you lose them.
So my takeaway from what he was saying is that he genuinely thought that Marvin Bagley was a worse player, but that he was going to be just bad enough where we might be able to keep him for a while. Right? Like that, because when you go through the draft, especially at that number, you're trying to draft the best possible talent you can draft. And in Vlade's head, Luka was going to be, when I hear him say big market player, he thinks he's going to be too good, which is insane for a GM to say. He's going to be too good and he's going to leave. So let's go take Marvin Bagley because he might not be as good, which means he might stick around. The logic is insanity. It's absolute insanity.
Like I could see justifying it in the sense of like, look, I drafted Papagiannis. He didn't work out. Some of these Euro picks that I've invested in, Bogdanovic has been okay, but he's not been a star. Like, let me go with a blue chip Duke guy. There's a logic that you can
before he talks, you can make sense of it. After he talks, it makes no sense. Again, I understand that perspective. Like, you don't want to give up the farm to go get LeBron in the last year of a contract because he's not going to re-sign with the Sacramento Kings. He's a big market player and he's going to want to go sign somewhere in a big market for a chance to win a championship. Like in that scenario, I get why you wouldn't do that. But for a guy like you said that you're going to have control over for 8 years, it makes no sense.
Which is an eternity in the NBA. I think there's this very romantic.
Not to mention, if you know he's going to leave and he's a superstar, you make a big trade. Yeah. Like he's a piece. He's a piece in a huge trade. You can get Anthony Davis at 35 years old. Okay. There's options here.
And it's interesting too, because there's another guy who, by all accounts, was a big market player. He was a number 1 overall pick. He led the Fab Five to 2 straight national championship games. They were runner-up, I think, both years. Chris Webber didn't want to come to Sacramento. Let's take a trip down memory lane.
Purgatory, that's what I felt. At the time, Sac was the only place in the league I'd ever been where the coach let you drive to the game and drive home. You know what I mean? Like everything, it was like, no, we trying to get out of there as fast as you. Not because of the people, but because of the basketball environment. Like you don't know a lot about it. It's not much history. And so I didn't want to go to Sac. I thought it was the worst thing. And then, it's good when you have good people in your life, but it's messed up too, because my mom, she just nonchalant. She was like, oh yeah, this must be the place God got for you, baby. It's a home for everybody. She was just so, I was like, Mom, you don't know who.
You can't even argue about it.
Yeah, same thing with high school though. She always right, so yeah. I'm on the plane, man, I'm looking out the window and all I see are these fields.
And by the way, just a side note, this is a worse attitude going in than Luka had. By all accounts, Luka was totally fine coming to Sacramento.
And I swear tears just start coming. I'm obviously crying, but I'm not crying. It's just tears. And I'm thinking like, man, it's going to be the worst thing for me. So I get there, I don't go, I'm late, all that. I still don't want to be there. I get there and I tell our equipment manager, Rob, and other people like, y'all, excuse me, I just don't want to be here. It has nothing to do with y'all. I don't want y'all to relationship to make me want to be here. I'm gone. Because at the time, it was a trade, and I'd been on the phone. Jerry West had a trade with Sacramento, and it was me for Eldon Campbell, Eddie Jones, and somebody else.
Did you know about this?
No.
I never have. This is my first time hearing it.
I wanted to be a Laker. Like, I wanted this magic, you know what I mean? So I wanted to be a Laker. Of course. I get on the phone and I beg the GM, Jeff Peach. I'm like, look, you don't want somebody that's not there, man. This is after everybody called. This is months. And I'm like, you don't want somebody that's not there. You want somebody's commitment. I don't want to be there. Y'all sorry. I don't care who y'all bring in. Y'all ain't never care. But I'm talking to him greasy, hoping he like, oh, yeah, right. You can. And he's like, Chris, you know, we understand all that, but we work real hard to get you, and thank you. We think you're going to change things around. Everything I said, he would just stick to the script. So I get to the first practice, and we sign Vlade, and I'm like, Vlade.
So I wanted to play that because, again, unfortunately, as Sacramento Kings fans, as hard as we've tried to nuke the nostalgia, there's been only one period of time where the team hasn't sucked. And let's review what Chris Webber just said. Didn't want to come here. You traded for a player who didn't want to be here. Okay? You didn't draft him where you would have control for 8 years. I think they had 3 years left on his contract. So they had a couple years to convince him to resign. You had another trade on the table to get him out of here for pieces or whatever before he even played. And he was pushing hard for it. And you said, Chris, I'm not looking for volunteers. I am looking for hostages. It's the inverse of what Scott Perry said.
Right.
Yep. Guess what? Chris Webber resigned.
Right.
The Kings should have won a championship or two if he didn't blow his knee out. So the moral of the story here is the people in charge of the Sacramento Kings are losers. They have a loser's mentality, and that permeates the entire organization. And frankly, you know, for all the pillars that Scott Perry talks about and all that stuff, I think that he needs to really can this "we want volunteers, not hostages" thing. I want hostages. I really don't care. If you're making $20 million a year, I don't care if you want to be here or not.
Just do what you're told.
I expect you to be a professional.
Right.
And guess what? There are probably very few places in the NBA that it would be more fun to be a part of than Sacramento when the team is actually
a good Sacramento team. Yeah, I agree with that.
Sacramento team is like, you are the talk of the town, you are royalty, and you are sweethearts nationally because you're a smaller market or whatever. It's like when the Thunder had Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook and James Harden, everyone loved them. Like, oh, like these young Thunder. Right. Now, granted, those guys were all superstars, but like the point remains, it's like you can be a darling without playing for the Knicks. Like, it's fine. So
one of the things that stood out to me most in that clip from Vlade is how, like, again, he said all of his assistants told him that Luka's the pick, and he essentially independently went away from that.
That's not what he said.
Well, he said that all of them independently said that
he could play small.
He can play small forward, and that was his main concern. So they were essentially telling him, like, your main concern's not valid. This guy can play a number of different positions, and he's like, no, I'm going to take this one on my own.
I think that there's a broader conversation here too, which is like, what exactly are we trying to do as, you know, as armchair general managers or as actual general managers in this case? I feel like the conversation has shifted in the last 20 years, 15 years roughly, since Philadelphia started the process, especially of like, you want to string together and build this masterpiece roster from the ground up. And this is where you get into like, you draft a player, but you want to be bad for a couple of years. So you get more draft picks and like, you're really starting to stack the talent on your team, kind of the way that Oklahoma City and to some extent Houston and all these teams have done. It's the Carmichael Dave method, let's call it. And I just don't think that that's very intelligent. And this goes back to the whole tanking conversation. I think that in the NBA, you have short windows, and I think it's on you to try to put something together, put your best foot forward. At times, you can take strategic steps back. I think, again, the Fox trade should have been one of those scenarios where it's like, this team is in it. Let's trade him for a draft pick and a young player. Like, they could have got that. I'm sorry, they absolutely could have gotten that in that trade. And instead, they did the other thing, incredibly short-sighted, and was like, let's go for a playoff run this year. Let's get Zach LaVine in here.
Right.
I think that when you draft a player, you need to just approach it like, I've got this guy for 8 years. If we get more than 8 years out of him, we get more than 8 years out of him, but we have 8 years to make something happen.
8 years is an eternity in an NBA career.
If Yanni leaves Milwaukee tomorrow, they got their money's worth. Even if they don't get anything for him, they got him for 13 seasons. They won a championship.
I would say they got a championship out of him.
Like, that's what it's about.
That's what you want.
That's it. That's it. Okay, the fact that they didn't, Jabari Parker didn't work out for them and all these other high draft picks they had, and they couldn't build this super team. It's like, okay, well, they probably could have done a better job, and that would have been better for them as a franchise. But when the time came, they were able to actually pull a championship out of that draft pick. And that's the approach that you need to have. We're going to draft Luka. We have him for 8 years. We'll figure it out. We'll see if him and Fox can play together. And if they can't, we'll trade Fox. And then, a couple years later, you end up drafting Halliburton anyways. So it's like, and I know
again, he drafted for fit, not the best talent on the board, which again, at that pick number is insane.
Especially when
at any pick numbers, that's insane. Honestly, like, unless you're in the second round or something, but in the first round, you're picking the best talent on the board.
They were like a 28-win team the season before. And then that first season when Bagley was a rookie is when they won 39 games. And to be honest, Bagley did not look that bad as a rookie. I don't know what the hell happened there, but
no, he was fine.
He fell off. So, kind of segueing into the next thing I wanted to talk about. I sent you this hypothetical scenario. This is a dream scenario. There's no indication that this is even a possibility, but I feel like this is kind of the talk of Kings Twitter as of late, is like, no, you have to do the full rebuild. You can't skip steps. And I just thought to myself, okay, what if you got the number 1 pick and you have AJ DeBonsa? Okay.
Right.
He's a small forward, plays the same position as Keegan. You draft him. You turn around, you trade Zach LaVine straight up for Ja Morant. Okay. Which functionally undoes the De'Aaron Fox trade, because Ja and Fox basically the same player, give or take.
Right.
They have different weaknesses, but just
right.
just roll with me.
Yeah, we got it.
Okay. And then you take Keegan and like Neek or something else, maybe Max instead of Neek, whatever. You figure that out. And you package that with a couple unprotected picks, a couple pick swaps, maybe a couple second rounders, whatever. You just kind of put this aggressive package out and you try to trade for Paolo Banchero. So then you have a starting lineup to go into next season of Ja Morant. I'll say Malik Monk as your shooting guard. DeBonsa, Banchero, and Sabonis. And then you have DeMar DeRozan off the bench. And that's a pretty good squad. And that squad has a lot of room for growth over time, because you're going to expect DeBonsa to grow.
Right.
He's ideally your number 1 in this situation. And then you have a legit 2 in Banchero, and you have a legit 3 in Ja Morant. You've built a team that on paper could grow together and become a contender in the next couple years. What are your thoughts, Jeff?
I would execute this trade immediately. I mean, especially, I know we're going to get to it later on, but especially with the changes in the draft lottery process that are upcoming, that do not reward a full rebuild at all. I think that it makes sense to try to become competitive with that kind of a trade. The question is, what picks would they want to get from us? Because my understanding is that we have, our own. Basically, we have our own firsts through 2030.
We have all our own firsts. I think on July 1st, that's the next year. We have all our draft picks till 2032.
Okay, and we have the 2027 first from San Antonio, correct?
Not quite. So we traded that pick to Oklahoma City for Neek. And in theory, it's complicated, but in theory, we still don't officially have that pick. It's top 20 protected or something like that, but we don't expect San Antonio to be in the top 20. So we expect that pick to convey, at which point it would go to Oklahoma City to complete the Neek Clifford trade. So we don't have that. We do have a 2031 unprotected from Minnesota.
Okay.
And that's why I'm saying, like, you can get creative here. It doesn't need to just straight be draft picks. You can be like, okay, we'll give you 2. We'll give you Keegan.
Right.
And then we'll give you Neek, which is like a late first, functionally. And then you're given 2 unprotected. So it could be the number 1 overall pick next year, whatever. Here you go.
Right. Yep.
And then we'll give you a couple pick swaps. Pick your year, we'll give you a pick swap. So if, you have a better record than us and we have a higher pick, you get our pick and we get your pick. So at least at that point, you still have a draft pick. You're not completely giving it away, but you're letting them take, you're switching with them. And to be honest, I don't think Paulo's a number 1. I'll just tell you that right now. But I think in this type of scenario, this is exactly the type of calculated risk that you should take.
Yeah, and I don't think Keegan is the player I don't think he's ever going to become the player that we want him to be. Or frankly, even the player he was during his rookie season. So I think that if you can get rid of him while his trade value is still relatively high, I guess that's a question. Mm-hmm. What do you think his trade value is on the market right now? Because the Kings front office talks about him like he's a superstar and untouchable, but I don't think that's the case.
Well, I think that
when it comes to the market overall,
I think that if you read NBA Twitter, a lot of people are like, free Keegan, like he needs to get out of Sacramento or whatever. So I still think that there's some value there. I think that he's not just a throw in. Like if you could trade him into this draft, you're probably getting a late lottery pick, like a number 10 or a number 12 pick.
Right.
I think. So, functionally, if you're trading that for Paulo, I think you do it, right? But
I agree.
If the Kings don't get the number 1 pick, let's kind of talk about a few different scenarios here. Let's say they don't get the number 1 pick and they draft Caleb Wilson or Cam Boozer.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, I don't think you go after Paulo because Paulo's a power forward. Keegan, his best position is small forward. So I would kind of just try it with Keegan and your new power forward at that point. But there's other things that you could do. Maybe instead of trading Zach LaVine for John Morant, you trade Malik and DeMar DeRozan, who, he's only guaranteed $10 million next year. So functionally, it kind of wipes out John Morant's salary if Memphis, because he has no trade value at this point from what everyone is saying.
Yeah.
Like,
do you know how many years he has left?
He has this year and next year. So he has 2 years left. So you got to figure out, as much as you need to sell him, you need to figure out if you want to keep him anyways. And it's kind of you're not giving anything up for him, so why not type of thing. Yeah. That's the way I look at it. So if you were to do the Malik Monk and DeMar DeRozan straight up for John Morant, then you could stretch Zach LaVine, and now all of a sudden you have cap room. Personally, I don't like stretching. I would rather just eat it for a year and have it completely fall off the books.
And personally, I don't like Zach LaVine either, so I'd rather have him off the team.
Yeah, but then you have to pay. Then you have a $13 million cap hit or $16 million cap hit for 2 extra years. So it's like having another mid-level player on your book.
Right, understood. Yeah.
Like, to me, it's like you're at the last year. Just get rid of him. Right. Like if you just, I would literally just say, dude, go home. And like, that's it. And then you start either DeMar or you start Malik, and you just don't even count on him as being a player. Maybe you trade him at the deadline for some team that's looking to dump salary. Like that's a possibility. I think in the stretch scenario, you go to him and you tell him, look, we'll give you 39 million instead of 49 million. So you have to eat 10 million because you're probably going to go sign with a team for more than 10 million anyways. Like Zach LaVine's more than a $10 million player. Like he is, right? So we take your 49 and we pay you out 39 and we stretch that over 3 years. That's 13 million a year. That's another scenario. Another scenario is you trade Sabonis for John Morant. And then you stretch. To me, I would rather just keep Sabonis.
I was going to say, I think I like Sabonis on this team better than LaVine. And I think there's some scenario where Sabonis could be a player on this team long term, so long as we have the pieces around him. But obviously right now we don't. So,
well, if you get him on
but I think if you have a real strong power forward on the team, that can make a big difference.
Yeah. Look, I think if you have him on the team and the team is good and the team is winning, and then you have Maxime coming up behind him, you kind of get ready for that changing of the guard where Maxime could become the starting center, and you can cash in Sabonis in some trade and get something, and it'll be a better trade in the sense that the team taking him on will be taking on less years of a contract, so they might be willing to part with an asset, whereas I think a lot of the time now they're looking at him like, ooh, he's got 3 years left. That's a lot. He's still got a lot of time left on that contract.
Yeah.
When the team's looking to push their chips in and just kind of go for it, they might take that if there's like a year left or a year and a half left. Like, okay, we'll eat it for the next year and a half. Like the Warriors, for example, they don't have a center, right? I don't think Sabonis fits what they do over there, but hypothetically, like,
I think they're about to change what they do over there. So,
oh, that's great news, by the way.
I mean, it's looking like Steve Kerr's gone. So
Steve Kerr is just.
I saw a tweet.
One of the worst people.
I don't think it's real, but I saw a tweet that said he was Denver's his most likely landing spot.
Who? Sabonis?
Steve Kerr.
Nah, no.
You don't think so?
I mean, if that happens, I'd hire David Adelman here in Sacramento.
There you go.
I mean, that's an easy one right there. Like David Adelman, prior to them firing Mike Malone, was being talked about as the next guy who's going to be a head coach in the NBA. And I don't think he's done a bad job in Denver. I mean, considering what they've done this year with the injuries to Jokic and all that, they clearly don't have the roster. But
we don't need a head coach. We already have a head coach for next year. We're good to go. Come on, dude. That's already set in stone.
Oh my God, dude. Oh man,
you gotta get that. You gotta get that out of your mind, dude. We're not getting a new head coach.
Well, okay. What do you think? Okay. What other options are there really to improve the roster that you could see right now, aside from the draft? Would you trade, hypothetically, just going to throw this out there, would you trade Keegan for another first-round pick this year if you could do that? Like if there's no other offers out there, or there's no other options, there's no Paolo Banchero trade or something like that.
Let's I don't think so.
The Warriors have the 11th pick. Would you trade him?
I don't think so. I think I need to see. I think I need to see another established player come in for Keegan. As long as Keegan's, I'm assuming, going to be packaged with other folks that we send out or picks. Again, I think if you look at the number 11 in the draft, you're kind of hoping he can get to be as good as Keegan Murray, because Keegan's not bad, right? He's not a horrible player. He's just not the guy. And I think he's probably, on an ideal scenario, he's probably our fourth best option on the team. So if we can find somebody that we can package with him to go get somebody who can be, even just move up one spot, be our third option on the team, I think that's a move I would make. But for the 11th pick, I don't think I'm going that route. Again, especially with the changes they're making to the lottery. Because I think that changes the conversation a lot, right? Last podcast we talked about this, and I was all for a major rebuild, and frankly, even tanking, because it's like, let's just go get the picks we can get, and we're going to lose anyways. And we're disincentivized to do that with this new lottery system.
Okay. Before we get to the new lottery system that's being proposed, it hasn't been approved or ratified or whatever. we got to talk about the point guard situation, because I think that's kind of that's the thing that Doug Christie mentioned. It's the thing that they talked about last year and they failed. I think John Morant's out there. You could just go get him. I don't see why you don't do it. Now the question is, if you draft a point guard, does that change your math?
For getting Ja?
Mm-hmm.
Probably not. Again, I don't think I really want a rookie point guard that's expected to come in and be the guy. I'm thinking a Cuff. If he ends up in Sacramento, I think it'd be great to have him behind Ja, especially if Ja's only going to be here for 2 seasons. You give a Cuff a chance to learn and grow behind him a little bit. Because again, Ja's a hell of a player, so he's going to learn a lot from Ja, and he's going to be able to come in and kind of learn the system and learn how it's supposed to go, and then take over the reins while he's still on a rookie deal. So I think that could be a good move in both scenarios. But I also think you could probably just do that with Westbrook as well, right? You could just keep Westbrook on board and have that same scenario and not have to really give up anything. So I think, that's also an option. I don't think that we're going to, aside from Ja, I don't see any other point guards that we're going to bring in that are going to make a big difference.
Okay.
And frankly, I wasn't a believer in the Dennis Schroeder deal either. Like I never thought Dennis Schroeder was going to come in here and be a guy. I thought he was an okay placeholder. I was wrong about that. He wasn't an okay placeholder. But I don't think that you're going to find somebody else on the free agent market that's going to come in here and make a huge difference.
Well, I throw a lot of that on Doug Christie too. Like, I don't know what type of offensive system they were running, but it was very poor. I'll tell you that. It didn't work. I
guess speaking of Doug Christie, let's say you execute this trade as we had talked about, and you tweeted about. You can't keep Doug Christie in that scenario. If you make that big swing and you bring in Paolo and you get the number 1 pick, you absolutely cannot keep Doug Christie.
Yeah, but I'm just assuming for the time being that he is going to be here. So, does he see the end of the season? I'll call my shot right now. I don't think he does. I think that the way that Vivek has historically done business, he likes to fire coaches in the middle of the season, because then he can hire a new coach as an interim and pay them as an interim instead of giving them the full head coaching title with a full head coaching salary. So right. I think that the way that they're looking at it with Doug is he's the sacrificial lamb. He's a good face to put on it. Everyone loves Doug, just like everyone loves Vlade.
Right.
And so from a business standpoint, he's really good from a business marketing standpoint, he's really good at keeping the fans like nostalgic and on the carousel,
of course,
right?
Yeah.
But if he's going to have another season like that, obviously he's going to get S-canned, right? So I don't know.
I don't know. Is it obvious? I don't know.
I listen, I'm operating under a few different assumptions here that I don't have any direct knowledge or evidence of, but it just feels right. I think Doug was hired because he's friends with certain executives that have the ear of Vivek. I think that he played the political game, having been a company guy and been a right. team guy for so many years, being the announcer, being all these things. He was the cheapest option, and he kissed Vivek's butt. And so that was like, for them to fire Mike Brown and put the number 4 assistant into the interim spot. It's an insane thing. And for Scott Perry
the hire never made sense in the first place.
To bring him back after just falling on his face the last 20 games of the season last season and the play-in, it tells you that it's a directive from management. And so since it's directed from management, there's a financial component. He's being paid the least. I think that they're just looking at him, and especially Scott Perry's just looking at him as someone who is going to be the fall guy. And once we get rid of Doug, that's when the clock starts. I'm pretty sure that's how Scott Perry feels in his head. As soon as either they get the number 1 pick, I think that if you get the number 1 pick, the clock starts. But
I agree.
If you don't, which statistically you probably won't, then the clock starts when you get to hire your first coach, which was not Doug, in my opinion, to be clear. I don't know that for sure, but
yeah,
you're telling me if you're Scott Perry that Doug...
I think Scott Perry has a long-term plan for a rebuild, and as you said, Doug Christie's part of that plan for a short amount of time, and the plan is to lose. If they happen to win, then okay, great. You know, that's awesome. But I think they're willing to give him enough rope to execute the plan of losing for a while so that you can eventually win. Not that it's a good plan, but that's the plan.
Did the Kings make a mistake by not going after Trae Young?
Again, I don't know what we were being asked to give up, but the short answer is yes, because I think Trae Young is a baller, and I think he would have been good on this team. And again, we're saying we need a point guard. There's your guy.
Yeah, but I guess
what did I remember talking about it when it happened, but what did Washington give up for him again?
Well, there's this cool new app called ChatGPT. Let me look it up.
I remember when it happened, I was like, we would have given that up in a heartbeat.
Great pod. So from what I recall, it was basically like, who wants him? Like, just we'll give him to you. Just make the salaries work.
Right.
Okay, so Washington gave up CJ McCollum, Corey Crispert, and that's it. 2 players.
Yeah. I mean, again, we would have done that in a heartbeat.
I think the problem is
I don't know if the salaries would have matched. Yeah, that's fair.
He wanted like a 55. He wanted De'Aaron Fox's extension as soon as he
landed. I recall that we wanted that you and I had chatted about. We would have just given up Sabonis straight across for him.
Yeah, I mean, especially
which I still would have done. I'd do that today.
Where are we with Max?
Dude, I think he's good. I think Max is going to be a player. I mean, I'm expecting him to have a sophomore slump next year. Mm-hmm. I'm expecting him to have a bit harder time next year. But again, he's smart. He's out of Stanford. He's got the skills for it. He showed that he can play in the league. Once he puts the muscle on and gets in the gym this summer, I think he's going to come back a more ready version of what he was his freshman year, and we'll see how the sophomore slump treats him. But I think he's going to be a player.
So what are you doing with him? Are you trying to turn him into a stretch 5? Are you trying to muscle him up? Are you trying to work on his footwork? What's your plan for him?
I think he's got to be a stretch 5. I think he's got to be a stretch 5.
So
and they talked about that in his exit interview. You know, that's going to be basically his goal for the summer is build muscle and work on the 3-pointer.
So do you go the Lauri Markkanen route with him, or because it's hard for me to imagine a guy putting on a bunch of muscle when part of his problem is perimeter defense, right? Like when he gets those switches on the pick and roll, he's already a little slow there. So if you put a bunch of muscle, that doesn't help that. Yeah, he needs to get stronger so he doesn't get pushed around under the basket, especially on defense. And then I think you can't do it all in one summer.
Right, but I think part of it's going to be that he needs to get stronger, but also he needs to learn to get to his spots better and figure out. He's going to get smarter as well as stronger. So he's going to figure out how to deal with those situations, not just from a physical standpoint, but from a mental standpoint, and where he needs to be in the best position to defend those positions. So I think he's going to get better in that as well, even if he does get some bulk put on.
So you're saying he's not a mentally weak person?
Not mentally weak.
Okay. My kind of unpopular opinion about Dylan Cardwell is I think he can be a guy who hits a corner 3. Like, it's super random. Like, he never scored in college, from what I understand. He averaged like 5 points.
Yeah.
But like, he randomly just started hitting some shots towards the end of the season. And I'm like, huh, like, it's not that hard to just hit a corner three, if
right. Yeah.
So if you could just get that guy to just be able to sit in a spot and hit an open shot with the defense that he brings, like, he's an excellent pickup, considering he's undrafted. So
yeah, I don't mind him as a backup at all.
Well, in the process of talking about team building, we have to talk about the new NBA, or what appears to be the new NBA, and what we're looking at as far as the proposal. I mean, I don't know how else to put it, where functionally they're not going to weight it the way they have been, where the worst record has the best odds. They're actually going to make the best odds for the teams that are 4th through 10th. And then they're going to include functionally every team that doesn't make the playoffs. So they're going to expand it out so that even the 7-8 play-in loser. Here, you've probably done more research into this than me, so you go ahead and explain this.
Yeah, so essentially the worst record, the bottom 3 records are at 5.4% odds to get the first pick. And then everyone from 4 through 10 is at 8.1%.
Mm-hmm.
And then it drops back down for 11 through 14 has the same odds as the worst 3 records. So obviously, what they're trying to do here is disincentivize losing, which I think is excellent. And it's going to be, it honestly would make the games at the bottom of the standings much more interesting, because these guys would be battling for a 4th spot as opposed to being in that bottom 3. So those games would be, I guess you could say, more meaningful than they currently are, because right now, no one's really paying attention. Everyone's just trying to see who can lose the most. And it might actually incentivize a winning mentality, which would be a nice change.
This is a really interesting. So I haven't seen this before. This is the first time I'm looking at it, to be clear. I wanted to have just a raw take on it on the podcast, so I purposefully avoided this. There's a couple problems here. Number one, okay, now teams are going to gun for the 4th worst record, because, like, here's the thing.
Well, they're gonna gun for the 4th through 10th, because there's no,
because here's the thing, and perhaps you could fill in some of the details here, but this is just for the number 1 pick.
Sure.
So what you're talking about when you're talking about draft order generally is, what if we don't win the lottery? I'm guaranteed no worse than this pick, right? So the Kings, everyone's mad. They're not mad because the Kings went from 12.4% to 10.8% or whatever the percentages are.
They're mad because
they're mad because now they could fall down to 9 instead of, if you had the worst record, you're guaranteed no worse than 5. So that problem is still here, and that's still going to push a lot of teams to lose. I think fundamentally, any type of actual fix needs to incentivize winning, not disincentivize losing. And those are not exactly the same thing.
Sure, that's fair, but I don't think that. I think that's hard to build into this process, because, again, you're not going to, if you're incentivizing winning, then the team who wins the championship is going to get the number 1 pick. So obviously you're not going to do that. I don't have the data on it right now, but there was something in this proposal where you can drop down even further to like the 14th pick or something. Again, I don't have the data on it, so I can't.
So this is just for the number 1 pick. So how many picks are we doing for the lottery? All 14?
Yeah, I think 14.
Huh.
I think that's the change. So again, I think at the very least, it makes it so you don't want to get
the worst record.
The worst record, right? Because, again, we had the situation this year, and we've had it many years, where I'm actively mad that we're winning games. I'm like, what are we doing winning that game? Like, we'll win a random game against Denver or Milwaukee or Indiana or whatever, and it's like, why did we just win that game? Like, that was a bad decision. And so at least this makes it a little bit more interesting for the number 1 overall pick, because you want to be in that 4 through 10 spot for the number one spot, for the number one overall pick.
You know what the actual solution to this is, and we know why it's not. Spoiler alert, George called me like 2 days ago, and I had a long conversation with George on it because his what word do I want to use? It's politically correct. His OCD was triggered by a lot of these conversations because, you know, he's a math guy, right?
Right.
And we hate the bean counters and all that. And this is a lot of bean counting going on here. But George said, and I think I agree with him, that the actual solution here, which is not possible, but the actual solution is relegation.
Right.
And so he's like, okay, since we cannot,
which by the way is the word they're using with the bottom three. It's not actual relegation, but they're using that word in this proposal. That the bottom three is the relegation zone.
So what George said, maybe to add to this, maybe you could stack that on this proposal, is what you're actually going to do is you're going to have the bottom two teams play in a round robin tournament against the top two teams in the G League, right? And of course, the NBA teams are going to win you're going to call it the humiliation bowl, right?
Because you have to play.
You have to play it, but like that's the point: is you have to play it, right?
And I think there'd be a lot of people that tuned into that. By the way, I think that would get viewership.
I think it would the first couple years, but I think the NBA teams would just smack the G League teams so bad that then you would stop watching it after like.
I would root for the G League teams more than you could possibly imagine.
Oh, for sure.
Like that's all. All I want to see is a G League team win.
Okay, so I'd like a little bit more information. What happens on pick 7 here? Like, you know, because right now they do the lottery for the top 4. Like, what exactly is this more fleshed out system? On its face, I mean, it's interesting conceptually. I still think you're trying to look at a sweet spot. You know, like we're just bad enough to get that 8.1%, but we're not.
We're still going to have a decent pick if we don't get it.
Yeah, like I still think like
there's a lot of gymnastics that goes on in that though, too, because like now everyone's battling for the 4th spot. Like there's a lot of more moving pieces there. I think it's harder to achieve. If your goal is to get the number 4 spot, I think that's harder to achieve. It's easy to get the number 1 spot. Just lose all your games.
So what's up with this new thing in this proposal where you're going to have 2 playoff teams in the lottery?
Yeah, I like it. I like that a lot, actually. Because they're the play-in teams, right? They're not playoff teams. They're play-in teams. And you're going to have these guys who are trying to get better, right? You're in that zone where you're trying to win games. You're trying to make the playoffs, and you're making a push. I think those teams should be rewarded. If somehow you hit the number 1 pick with the 2.7 odds as a play-in loser, I think you deserve the reward. Because this system still rewards bad teams. I mean, you have to, and if you want to keep the league going and you want to keep these teams competitive, but why not give those guys that are right out of the play-in tournament a shot at it?
Okay, I'm going to throw something else out there. It's tangentially related to this. So I talked to George about forming something known as the League Competitiveness Committee or something. You fancy it up however you want.
The LCC.
And it like I said, well, why don't you have this committee and their purpose is they have 2 purposes. The first purpose is conference realignment, because I think something that's very underrated here that actually, I don't know, everyone's talking about tanking, but no one talks about this other thing, which is the Western Conference has been the better conference consistently for the last since Michael Jordan retired from the Bulls in like 98. Like we're going on 30 years of this now. And so you'll see these teams where, you know, I should have mentioned this when we were talking about trading for Paolo and trading for John Morant. Like the thing that actually gave me this idea was the Boston Celtics trading for Paul Pierce, they had Paul Pierce, they traded for Ray Allen, and they traded for Kevin Garnett. And it's like, they kind of just came out of nowhere and all of a sudden they were this championship team. And it's like, so it is possible. But the reason that the wheels are turning in my head now that I'm thinking about it is that Boston team with Antoine Walker and Paul Pierce made the Eastern Conference Finals. And no one ever thought that that was like a legitimate thing. Like, oh, they're one of the top 4 teams in the NBA. The top like 6 teams were always in the Western Conference. And then you had a team or two that was good in the East. And that has been the case the entire time functionally that LeBron has been in the NBA. You'll notice he made 10 straight finals in the East, and his first season in the West, he didn't make the playoffs. Like, this is a problem. So I think that you need a committee to do some sort of, okay, we're going to move Chicago to the West because they suck. We're going to move Minnesota to the East because, like, you know, just those teams in the middle, just get it so where it's like, it's both conferences are kind of weighted. So that's one purpose. And then the other purpose is maybe that committee just picks who deserves the number 1 pick, who, like, the Kings did an ethical tank. They were just bad. Whereas these other teams, like the Kings deserve the number 1 pick, you know, maybe you have that committee and they just do this system for picking the number 1 pick. And then you do something else.
Not that there's not some shenanigans with our existing lottery system, but if we're having a group of people pick the number 1 pick, the shenanigan, it's going to be crazy. I don't think that's viable.
Yeah, but people
can be manipulated.
That's the ultimate bullet point here is people already think everything is fixed and they still watch.
That's fair.
So I'm not sure that the cost of doing that is quite what we might think it is, but
I would say you have to deal with a little uproar, then it blows over when the next thing happens in the news and you move on with your life.
Well, I don't know. It's late April. We got the NBA playoffs going on. I don't think anyone's been eliminated yet, but I'm sure a lot of series are pretty much over by now.
I was talking
lottery next week.
I was talking to some Kings fans at a golf tournament the other day.
Okay.
And they were asking, do you think the Kings were tanking on purpose? And these are like, when I say Kings fans, these are like very, very out in the distance Kings fans. These guys are not locked in when they're not watching every game. They're just Sacramento guys that are talking about the Kings.
Mm-hmm.
And I told them that the league conducted an investigation into the Kings for tanking, and it was determined that we are in fact not tanking. We're just losing on accident by making poor decisions. And you could see their faces like, oh my God.
These are Sacramento people that are asking this question.
These are Sacramento people.
Again, where have they been the last 20 years?
They're not tapped in. They're just they're sideline Kings fans. But it was so funny because they didn't know about the investigation. They didn't know about that we got investigated for tanking, and it turns out we're just bad. We're confirmed not tanking.
Well, yeah. I don't know, man. Like, look, we're going to keep doing the podcast because it's a creative outlet. And the only reason I even did the podcast to begin with, or restarted it after many years of it being defunct, is because I haven't heard anyone else in Sacramento media have like the right takes. Like, everyone was caught up on the details of like the De'Aaron Fox trade and like, oh, well, should they have traded? It's like, just no one ever has the right take on the Kings, which is like, oh, maybe if we're bad enough, like they've reinvented losing is winning. And it's like, no, you win by winning. No one has the win by winning take except for me. So, and Jeff, you're a great co-host. So we're going to keep doing this, but I think the last thing that we need to talk about is the lottery next week. Any predictions?
I'm going to say something. I have a weird feeling we're going to get the number 1 pick. I've had this feeling for a while. And God's honest truth, I hope it doesn't happen. It's the loser thing that's creeping in. The loser thing creeps in immediately.
You're already waiting for us to mess it up.
I'm like, we'll take the Greek guy from the Euro League with the number 1 pick.
Yeah.
I don't know, man.
Yeah. Well, hopefully whoever we take, they're a small market guy, whatever that means.
Yeah,
so,
hopefully. Yeah, we don't want this guy to get too big and try to leave us. What do you think? You got any predictions?
I mean, to the extent that the lottery's legit, the Kings are kind of due. mathematically, like they're bad.
Yeah, it's
every year.
It's impossible.
They never get it, and the Spurs are bad 4 times, and they get 3 number 1 picks. Like,
right?
How does that happen? But maybe there's a little bit of extra ink on one of those ping pong balls.
That's it. Yeah, we're either getting the number 1 or we're getting the number 9. Those are our options: number 1 or 9.
I have a feeling we're going to get a top 3 pick. How about that? We've got, I think statistically, a 52% chance of finishing in the top 4, which is wild. But
okay,
yeah, I don't know. I just feel like we haven't really moved up in the draft. I don't think since we got Keegan.
Okay,
maybe. So I think we're due. All right, Jeff. Well, we're going to go ahead and leave it there. And I just want to reiterate one last. You win by winning.